the more I connected to this energy, the more I felt whole and fulfilled. I was connected again to this masculine energy. So the more that I got to know him, and I found out his name was Eros, the more I found out that he was just an aspect of my personality. He was the masculine side of me, and he's been here forever. The more that I connected to him, the more I noticed that I didn't need things to happen from the outside. I was so deeply validated internally. And so I started to notice that all these amazing things were happening. People were coming into my world. I got all these follows on Facebook out of the clear blue, didn't write any more content, but it was just like, people were like, do you want to come be on my podcast? I would love for you to be in my summit. And it was because I had broken this code of self-validation.
Welcome back to the Awakening Her podcast. My name is Talia Joy. I am your host, and today we are sitting down with Amy Lee Westervelt. You guys, this conversation is unlike any I've ever had. Amy Lee is the founder and creator of Erogetics movement. It's a methodology that helps women to connect with their inner masculine and to harness this life force energy to magnetize their dream lives. It's so interesting to hear Amy talk about this and her story of how this all came about, the powerful changes that have happened since harnessing this inner masculine energy and really creating and bringing alive this presence within herself. We hear a lot about the feminine energy. We hear a lot about the masculine and feminine together, but to hear a deep dive on activating your inner masculine energy is really powerful, and I can't wait for you to hear all about it. So without further ado, let's welcome Amy Lee onto the show. Hey Seeker, welcome to the Awakening Her podcast. I am so grateful that you've been led here, and I'm excited for you that you're answering the call to manifest more magic in your life by mastering the law of attraction. So cool. My name is Talia, and I'm committed to cutting the fluff and showing you exactly how to manifest more excitement, ease, success, abundance, confidence, love, and anything else you've been craving. So if you're ready to crack the code on manifestation, amplify your intuition, and play in the quantum, we are now besties. Let's do this. Hello, Amy Lee. Welcome to the show. How is it going today?
I am feeling amazing. I am ready to have this epic conversation and share this guidance with your listeners.
I am so excited. I often go into interviews kind of getting the gist of what we're going to talk about. Like, oh yeah, inner child. I know what we're talking about. But your specific topic is so unique. I am so excited to ask all my personal questions about what you're doing, but just to learn more. So yeah, let's just start by introducing yourself and your business, what you're passionate about.
Sure. So hello, I'm Amy Lee Westervelt. I am an Eros mystic, and I'm also a master neuroenergetics practitioner and mom of 5, and I've been happily married for almost 12 years. I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, but I live in Savannah, Georgia, which is a whole fun story in and of itself. And I've been a coach or mentor for about, I would say a little bit more than 5 years. I was in a multi-level marketing company before that, and let's be real, you're coaching full time. I had a team of like 10,000 people. And so I was already life coaching. So even though I say 5 years, it's really more like 10. I was just not getting paid as well the first 5. But I started my work with empaths and highly sensitives. And then I moved into helping empaths and highly sensitives to figure out what they wanted and what they desired. And that worked really well for a really long time. And it was only recently that I started to undertake this work, which I am now calling Erogetics. We'll talk about that today. But it's been such a crazy ride from the beginning, where it was like, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to be a visionary. I've always wanted to be a coach, but like in what? And now it's like, it's just who I am. And it's the energy of the work that I do. And it's less about the elevator pitch of let me tell you what I do. And it's more like, hold on, let me stand next to you for a second, or let me be in your energy on the internet. And it's like, oh, okay, I get it. You know? So it's just really beautiful to have that awareness that eventually, you know, you stop trying to explain away what you do and you recognize that it's you that's the magic, if that makes sense.
100%. You said that it's like just be in your sphere, in your vortex, and you'll feel it. And that's like, we can describe what a mango is, but before you taste a mango, it's, you don't, understand. So it's, you can explain and say, I do this and this, but it's in the vortex or in your energy that you really get the feel for it. And that's kind of like the work, right? How do you explain like doing the work and the benefits of the work? It's like, it's quantum, it's infinite. The benefits show up everywhere. It's hard to put a pin in it or an elevator pitch, as you said.
True. Yeah. Yeah. When you get to a certain caliber of potential client or even just conversation, you're no longer defining yourself by what you do. You're defining yourself by like who you are and where you are in your journey, and I think that both of our group of listeners are kind of more in that sphere. It's less about like, oh, so you're a banker, oh, you're an accountant, oh, you're an actress, and it's more like, so like, what are you vibing with right now? Like, what's your world about? Like, what are you getting into?
Definitely. And I love that you had the focus on empaths. And that's something that I teach is manifesting for empaths. And I have lots of episodes on that. And so many people say, like, I've never heard it said like this or never understood that manifesting is different for empaths. And I would describe it as manifesting is an energy game and being an empath is an energy game. So when you're talking about helping people to identify what they want out of life or to move forward in their life, it is different for empaths. It is different for us. We have to learn certain things. But I just love that you were drawn to that as well, because I saw a huge hole in like, why doesn't manifestation work for me the way I'm being taught? Like, oh, because I have to manage my energy. And what does that even mean? Right. So I just love that you've gone into that world and helping empaths as well. It's so important.
Yeah. And I think too, with this work that we're going to talk about a little bit, there are some hacks for empaths here as well, because one of the hardest parts about an empath is you are hyper aware of emotions, which means that you're hyper aware of everybody else's needs. And so it's hard to assert your own when you're so aware. If you're like totally dumb to the fact that everybody around you needs new shoes and you see a pair of new shoes, you're not going to feel like, oh, I shouldn't take those because I can feel that other people need it. I mean, this is a terrible example. Sometimes my analogies, Talia, are amazing and sometimes they suck. This one sucked. But essentially, like you're not aware of the need of everyone else. And so you don't feel guilty taking. Whereas when you're an empath, you're so wildly aware of everybody else's needs and desires, that you feel like, who am I to reach out? Who am I to inquire to the universe? Because there's so many people suffering around me. Many people are just completely oblivious to that suffering or to that lack. And so it never occurs to them to, pass on having those things for themselves. And so this also kind of like scratches that itch.
100%. It's funny how that works. I had a client just the other day that she had a bunch of things to do, but then a friend called her up and like needed her, even though it wasn't, she's like, it wasn't life or death, but I agreed to like, sure, I'll go for coffee. And then coffee led to go, can you help me pick up this thing? And then she said, I realized by the end of the day, I didn't get anything done that I needed to do. And I didn't have to drop everything. It wasn't like my kid's sick or something really important. It was just giving up what you need because this person needs me and this person anyway. Yes. I know that the listeners definitely understand that. And it's something we work on, like what is me and what is my need versus what am I feeling that is other people or what are other people's needs. It's such a lifelong journey for us, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I cannot wait. So let's talk about the work that we're going to talk about today and even just what led you to this work, defining it, talking about it. Let's dive in.
Okay. So this is a little bit of a two-parter, but so I told you a little bit that I was in this multi-level marketing company. So I want you to just imagine I was making multi-millions of dollars. I wanted for nothing. I had a housekeeper, I had a cook, I had all the things, right? Like I was throwing money at things, instead of delegating, I was abdicating. I was like, where can I make my life easier? My husband, at the same time, he was in the military for a long time. So he's just like living it up, enjoying the, energy, but we're not connecting at all. I'm the most miserable I've ever been in my entire life. And I'm recognizing that all of the things that kind of made us polar connected, the masculine and the feminine, they're like gone. Like, I'm the breadwinner. He's, out doing whatever, not out doing whatever, but he's, exploring his interests and playing and doing hobbies and becoming a man of leisure, I think is what he said. And we just like, all of a sudden, everything that made us kind of like fell apart. Mm. So then one day, I don't know why it was, but the second 50 Shades movie was coming out. And I was like, I want to go see it, right? Like, let's go date night, whatever. We go see this movie and something gets activated inside of me. I can't really put my finger on it, but I think what it was that there was this grounded masculine energy. And like, say what you will about like BDSM and all of that, because like it's a big part of my life. And I have a lot of other ways to defend that now. But back then I was like, oh my gosh, this is so, whatever. So this man had this energy of groundedness. He knew what he wanted and he could provide support energetically, where a woman who was like, kind of like a control freak, all of a sudden could let her guard down and just kind of feel like, okay, this is safe. This is okay. Like, I can lean into the structure of this and feel better. So we started to play with that dynamic in our marriage and it got way better. I was like, okay, great. So even though I'm making the money, you're still going to be the leader, if you will. And so I went down that whole path of like, surrendering and whatever, and, the dominant, submissive and all that stuff. And it worked really well for a while. Like I had these visions of like, we're going to teach the world and it's not subjugation. And I look at some of the stuff that I wrote before and I just cringe but you know what? It was a stepping stone, right? Mm-hmm. So this is all going great. We're getting along wonderfully. The DS part of our relationship's wonderful. And then my husband decides to do a water fast. A 40-day water fast. Now, mind you, the way that our relationship is set up at the time, I'm very dependent on his energy and very dependent on his doting. And it's very, all the praise kink and all the things. And, it's all there. Well, my husband in his water fast completely recedes into himself. Like he goes within, right? It's almost like he was on the top of a mountain, even though he was sleeping next to me. And I was completely disconnected from that energy, that masculine energy that I had learned how to lean into and feel. And I was like lost. And obviously, I say obviously, but for me, obviously, I wasn't going to go off and have an affair or something. And I wasn't going to go start talking to guys, but I definitely felt that absence of that energy. And it kind of like defined me. Mind you, I was teaching a class at this time all about divine union and what I thought it was at the time. And all of these things. And long story short, about day 10, I just started like going crazy. And I was just like going to bed early and everything because he wouldn't come to bed. He'd be like off writing or doing I don't know what he was doing, but he was doing his stuff. And I decided to think about like, what would it feel like if I could just create in my head the energy of a guy, of a masculine energy that would hang out with me, that would talk to me, that would listen to how my day went. And so I had this fictitious little vision of a guy who was kind of like a newsboy, if you will, from like the 1820s or whatever. And he would he would like walk with me in my brain and we would just talk about my day and he'd ask me questions and all of these things. And I found myself really getting excited to have this connection with this energy when I would go to bed at night. It was like I couldn't wait to get into bed so I could talk to him, so I could fall asleep with him. Then I started writing letters and he started writing back. And it was this energy almost like in my mind, which I know at the time and maybe now sounded nuts. But the more I connected to this energy, the more I felt whole and fulfilled. And even though my husband was having this ordeal, which he was more than welcome to do, and rightfully so, I was connected again to this masculine energy. Mm-hmm. So the more that I got to know him, and I found out his name was Eros, the more I found out that he was just an aspect of my personality. He was the masculine side of me. And he's been here forever. And the more that I connected to him, the more I noticed that I didn't need things to happen from the outside. I was so deeply validated internally that I didn't need that client. I wasn't connected to things the way that I was before. I didn't have the same attachment to outcomes. And so I started to notice that all these amazing things were happening. People were coming into my world. I got all these follows on Facebook out of the clear blue, didn't write any more content. But it was just like, people were like, do you want to come be on my podcast? I would love for you to be in my summit. People were emailing me like, I saw you on blah, blah, blah. It was so crazy. And it was because I had broken this code of self-validation. So I went and studied a whole bunch of things, and it turns out people have been doing this for thousands upon thousands of years. The original word hieros gamos, which is the word for holy matrimony, actually refers to connecting intimately with the God presence inside of yourself. You're actually having an intimate relationship, a surrender, a marriage, if you will, with the divinity that lives inside of you. So I had stumbled into this. My husband comes back from his ordeal. You know, we're better than ever, but now I had this energy. I wasn't resentful. I wasn't like, I've been here for blah, blah, blah days, you know, and it was just this next level awareness. And then I started teaching it to my clients. And now we have this whole movement of women who are so self-actualized and so validated that they're no longer like depending on external circumstances for their desires, for their satisfaction, for their fulfillment. And it's creating a really powerful sovereignty that I think we're going to see ripple throughout the whole world and possibly other dimensions, for lack of a better word.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing just your story and being real and authentic and this process. It's so fascinating because I think there's been a lot of focus on feminine energy, and there's a lot of women that want to be more in their feminine because maybe they have mother wounds, or it's hard to receive, it's hard to open up to other women. So rightfully so, and that needs to be nurtured as well. There's a lot of women focusing on feminine energy, whereas when you look at, and I'm curious to know your philosophy, if it's kind of along the same lines as the traditional sort of masculine energy. Like when I think of masculine energy, it's the structure, it's the steadiness, it's the groundedness, it's the confidence, it's the sometimes like, okay, get up, we have work to do, let's get to it. Other times it's just being that rock of like, I'm here, I'm your cave, it's okay, retreat into me, that masculine energy. And I call that I have a process, I work with people, sacred reparenting, where we channel our inner masculine, inner father to come in and be that steady presence that usually we didn't have or whatever. So it's really interesting just to think about helping, especially women, to activate the masculine is opposite of what a lot of us are trying to do. We're trying to receive more, we're trying to connect more, but especially for empaths, connecting is not the problem. Sometimes it's that structure or that steadiness, that steadfast sort of grounded energy. So I'm curious, like, is what you're talking about along those same lines of the masculine energy, and what does this masculine energy that you're helping your clients to activate, what does that bring to them, sort of? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So the shift here is that you're not activating it in you, you're allowing him to step into his role. So if you think about that inside of you, you've almost got these two little thrones, right? You've got the king and the queen. You are kind of draped across both chairs. And so he doesn't have a place to sit. So when you connect to the inner masculine, so just to kind of go back a little bit and why I feel this is different than the father archetype, when you think about when you first became a girl, a woman, a young woman, and I mean before you were sexually active, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that, like, oh my gosh, I want him to be my boyfriend, like when you're 11 years old and you're just like, oh my God, like you don't even know, why do you want to hold hands? Like, why do you want him to look at you? Why do you want him to sit next to you? There's an energy there that is like all encompassing. It's all you can think about. You want to be able to call him on the phone after school. And if you tap into that energy is life force energy. That's the energy that you could go all day. That's the energy that you're like, I could walk on the beach with him until 3:00 in the morning and then go and do an entire shift at the grocery store and then go to cheerleading practice. It's like this energy of like, oh my gosh, I am so desired. Like he likes me and he loves me, and everybody had that energy. Then we go and we find the person and we get married and we have the wedding, and this big culmination of individuality. And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, well, you got your person, everything dies down. We're no longer creating that energy. We're no longer in that like squealy desire energy because we've already got it. So because we're no longer desiring, we're no longer creating that connection. And so all of that energy shuts down. Now we start to age. Now, I mean, I was telling you I'm 40 years old. I don't look 40 years old, and I don't even have makeup on right now. If I had makeup on, you'd be like, oh my gosh, like you're not 40. But no, but I am. And if I showed you pictures of me 5 years ago, you'd be like, you look 10 years older then. And it's because my body is now generating this energy again between my desire for my sacred masculine and his desire for me. And so this energy is like going again. But before that, you have women who are like, I'm not making this energy anymore. Now I need it from the field. So now I'm validating from a client. I'm validating from how come you don't think I'm pretty anymore? You never want to take me out. It's like you're getting those hits externally because you're no longer creating it internally, right? And so for me to describe the sacred masculine, it's like, if you think about it, this is a weird analogy, but I think it'll make sense. When you have a real job, right? And they take taxes out, you never see that money. You don't have the luxury of not giving it to them. They take it before you ever see it. That's your relationship with your sacred masculine. You were his before your husband, before your wife, before anybody ever touched you. You're his first. He takes his first. So this isn't cheating on your spouse. This isn't instead of your spouse. I have the most amazing, rock solid marriage. My husband's well aware of my energetic practices, and we have amazing sex. We are more connected than we've ever been. He's fully aware of this, and it doesn't threaten him because he gets, at the end of the day, he gets a wife that's filled up, that's like, let's watch a movie, let's do something, let's have fun, like let's connect as whole people, rather than giving each other the scraps at the end of the day and trying to figure out how to make two more people out of two halves of people who've been eaten up by the day. Does that make sense? So it's like the sacred masculine is the completion. The partner is the complement to the completion, like the cherry on top.
Yeah. That is so cool, because we hear about that with doing your own healing work, so that you're not looking for validation from your spouse and to feel enough and to feel not abandoned. It comes from within you. So it's taking that principle that I know everybody's aware of like you're responsible for your happiness, your joy is your side of the street, but it's like in such a unique way. It's interesting because my role here as host of the show is to ask you questions, but as you're talking, I'm like really processing, like it's like, oh yeah, I have to also ask good questions. But it's so new to what I've heard about and what a lot of us have heard about. I love that this has channeled through you. So I hear you. It's not a cheating on, it's not an instead of, it's not fantasizing about somebody else in the way of like mental cheating. So in your mind, does this figure have a figure, or is it an energy? And it's probably different for everyone than your clients that you're teaching, but do you create like an archetype, a visual in your mind, or is it an energy you feel primarily?
So I would say he's definitely an energy, and I think you'll geek out on this part. There's a shamanistic astrology that says that the masculine for a woman is in her Mars, in her chart. So my Mars is in Capricorn. So he's a Capricorn. He's very by the book. He's very dominant. You know, he tells me to drink my water. He says things like, okay, you're freaking out right now. I want you to go take 3 deep breaths. Like we have lots of rituals that we do together. And so building him, the more that you give him a face, or the more real it becomes. And now all of us, like, you want to be careful not to humanize him too much, because remember, this is your unconditional lover, right? This is can you imagine what it would be like if you read erotic fiction and stuff, and it's like, I only ever had eyes for her. Like, women throw themselves at him, and it's like, why can't I be that girl? Why can't I be the girl in the book? Why can't I be the heroine of the story? The one, the Bella in Twilight, right? And it's like, you are. To this energy, there is no other you. You are the only, and he's been chasing you since before you even popped out of your mother. Like, he's been following the DNA of you with you your entire existence from before you even knew that you were you. And that, and that energy, I think, being connected to that, being like so deeply desired and loved up, and it's just, there's nothing, in my estimation, there's really nothing that compares to that connective energy, So in terms of like what he looks like, I mean, yeah, I definitely like, he's probably got dark hair or whatever, but the more that you humanize him, the more that, like, you want to be careful not to make him look like a celebrity or something, because then all of a sudden he's got all the faults of that celebrity too. And that's why we want to be careful not to model him after our partner either, because our partner still has desires. Our partner still looks out for number one. They just do. I mean, it's survival, right? But this energy is always looking out for you. Now, before I forget this thread, remember at the beginning when I was saying about the empath hack and about how we feel like we can't ask for our desires? So check this out. So when it comes to the masculine feminine paradigm, we think of reciprocity as like, I give to you, you give to me, right? And this is the way that the world works. And I have so many clients who will come and be like, I don't know why a guy would want me. I don't have a good job. I don't this. I'm like, do you even know what guys want? Like, do you know what men, true masculine men want? And what they want is for you to receive. They like when women receive. So when you enter into a partnership with the masculine energy, be it a woman who, who has masculine energy, or a man or whatever, or a non-binary person, however they present, when you enter into this relationship, the reciprocity is the receipt. So the way that you give back to the sacred masculine is to receive. So as an empath who has a hard time receiving, who blocks abundance because who am I to have? When you recognize that you're giving a receiving, that you show your love to your sacred masculine partner by taking the abundance that he gives you, now all of a sudden those gates are wide open because you're recognizing that the pleasure or the reciprocity is being provided through receipt. And that alone is such a game changer for clients, because they're like, wait, you're telling me that I'm loving you every time I tell you what I want, and I go, thank you so much. Thank you. So, oh my gosh, this came into my life. And so you see these empaths, these people pleasers that become pleasure pleasers. And now all of a sudden it's like, what else can I ask for so I can give you the satisfaction of seeing me receive it? Does that make sense?
Yeah. When you say, what else can I ask for? What do you mean, to source, like as far as our desires and that type of thing,
Like,
or
what
from
else
our
can I
partner?
articulate about my desires? Like, how else can I come forward? Because desires are so vulnerable. We don't want anyone to know what we want, because if they know what we want, they can control us. And especially for strong-willed women like we are, it's like, I don't want you to know what I want. I don't want you to have that one up on me. But if you're recognizing that in the sacred relationship, the more that you explain what you desire, the more they can provide it, which means that you're providing them an avenue to see you receive. Now all of a sudden you're like, what else do I want? What else do I desire? Oh, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this. And you're waiting for it to come in because you're recognizing that is your reciprocal role in the relationship.
Oh, I love that. There's so many nuances too. That is so cool. Because even in, say, my physical relationship, like with my husband, meaning not the masculine energy within me, but with him, he just wants clear direction. Or if I'm upset or if I'm stressed, like he thrives in like, how can I help? And if I'm like, babe, can you grab my blah, 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 it would really help. He's like, totally. There's never resentment or burden. And so it's interesting because just in that, I see him being happy to give. And when I receive, instead of like, oh, I'll do it myself, it actually helps us thrive better. And that's just one example. But I see that in relationships as well, that a lot of times, like, me being feminine is that receiving energy. And I find when I'm having a hard day, when I'm trying to like be alone and do it all myself, he just wants to be like, let me hug you. Like, let me, support you. You don't have to do this on your own. And when I'm like, babe, I've had a hard day, and fall in, he's just like, there, sweetie, and I can tell it's natural for us. It doesn't mean, like you said, doesn't mean I couldn't be the breadwinner, or I couldn't do this, or I couldn't, or have to be submissive in all these ways. It's about our natural roles as feminine and masculine. So it's just so interesting to hear you bring that into yourself and into this divine masculine energy within, or the male energy within. That's so fascinating. So when you do your practices, I know you can't give away all your secrets, but what is this? Is this part of your sort of daily energy practice? Do you create sacred time for just you and this energy? Do you go on dates? What do you do to kind of not activate, but as you said, like already tune into something that's within you?
Yeah, I think I kind of feel like it's almost like having an internal pen pal, like almost like you're text messaging all day. I'm actually writing a fiction book about this. It's going to be really cool. You won't know it's me because I'm writing it under a pen name, but you'll read it and you'll be like, I think she wrote that.
Yeah,
but,
cool.
But yeah,
I can't wait.
It's this idea. So things that I have always done, in the metaphysical space, I've adapted for erogetics. So for example, scripting, right? Big one in manifestation. when I'm writing, oh my gosh, my day was amazing, I'm writing it to him. It's gratitude. It's that reciprocal relationship. So it's like, thank you so much for this thing. And it's almost like you're writing a thank you note to that energy, right? And so like having that's one of the first things. I also have erogetic breathing practices. So like breathing the masculine in, holding it, feeling it in your body, and then allowing yourself to breathe it out, and, you know, in gratitude and thanks. And so that connective energy of heart to heart, really starting up that, you know, that mill, if you will, of energy to bring back that erogetic impulse, that desire, that squealing, that like, oh my gosh, it's Monday and he loves me, you know, like bringing that back. That like when you think about movies and the couple that's together, they're not like, all right, so we're going to go buy a house. Let's go look at like countertops. It's like, they just want to live in a cardboard box together. They don't care, right? Like, it's not about like, how can we enhance our life? It's like, I just wanted like my skin to touch your skin. Like, that's all I care about. And like entire wars are fought over this, you know, and that's the connective energy that we're really here for. And the more that you get into the mythos around this, you know, there's a book called the Eros Sutras. It talks about like climax consciousness versus desire consciousness. There's so many like you said, there's so many nuances to it, but and just to know that you're literally like walking around with your own sparkly vampire or your own, you know, handsome werewolf or whatever, your you know, handsome villain, whatever, James Dean kind of type inside of you, that's literally like, babe, I can't wait to get home so I can talk to you. Babe, I can't wait to get home. So, you know, like, oh, you're massaging your feet or whatever, you're doing a pedicure. It's like, go get a pedicure. And it's like, he got you a pedicure. So you know what I mean? So it's, and also writing letters is another thing. Like sometimes on my social media, I'm sure you'll come stalk me now, but you'll just see like, dear goddess. And I will channel a whole message from him about like how and that's another thing too, is the beautiful thing about erogetics. You can channel the masculine from the masculine too, because he is you. And so you get to see you from the other side. You get to experience being head over heels, obsessed with yourself from a romantic perspective. And when you can, it doesn't last long, at least not for me, but when you can jump into that seat, when you can be the energy of looking at you and how incredible and gorgeous and sexy and smart and sophisticated and like literally everything you are, it's this full circle self, I don't know, like devotion that's so next level. It's wildly magnetic because you no longer need anything from the external field. And now all of a sudden you're a magnet for, and when I say everything, I mean like pizza coupons, your mother-in-law suddenly wants to take you to lunch, people that never gave you the time. I have people that I reached out to years ago on social media and said like, oh, I'd love to help you with this or blah, blah, blah. And these messages are coming back years later, Talia, where these people are like, I would love to get on a call with you. I would, you know, it's like people that in my family that didn't have time for me are all of a sudden, it's mind-blowing the level of magnetism that you create when you activate this internal energy.
I was like making notes because when I know something's really good and I might lose it in all of this, I was going to say
Sure.
Yeah, totally. I was going to say there's a few different areas where I could see this being like particularly powerful. And one was manifestation and being magnetic, because this energy, I can just feel it is so magnetic that I talk to my clients about. It's not about getting things. It's about unleashing or allowing your natural magnetism to come forward because you already have the mojo. And that's the work, not going to get something exactly like you're saying. It's already within you. So definitely, I was going to say money because of the masculine energy associated with money. And I could just see that being powerful. Also relationships, when I have clients that come that have had troubles in relationships, they're looking for their penguin and it's been years, and that like activating that within yourself, I can just feel it. For those of you looking to find a man or soulmate, that feels very, very magnetic to act, because then you already have it. Exactly like you're saying, you already have it. And now you're magnetic to it because you're not needy about it. Right. And then also with God, and I would be interested to hear your connection. There's so many things here, so you'll probably have a lot to say, but
I told you, I was like, this is you before and let's see you after.
Yeah, this is so powerful. Because, and I don't even know what I feel about this. I'd love to just jam out like casual
Yeah.
style about God being a masculine energy. And I've challenged this thought because some people say God, goddess, nature, creation, which is more
Your
feminine.
goddess.
But
Your goddess.
yeah, right.
So God is the masculine partner of you. You are divinity. You are God having a human experience, and there's this prismatic piece of you. Now, in this life, you're female. So the other side of you, so that you can experience yourself, is going to be the duality of that, which is the masculine, right? So it's not that he's your God, it's that it's the aspect of your partnership. It's the king to your queen. Now, when you're little, obviously you don't need a king because that's gross, and you're small and you're not at your maturity, and you don't understand the need for, putting the plug in the hole, right? Like spiritually as well as sexually. So at that point, it's almost like I really should just like make a book about how this is like Twilight. I feel bad, but in Twilight, where Jacob, the werewolf, imprints on the little girl, and she's like, that's my baby, and he's like, relax, I'm going to be like an uncle to her until she's like in her 20s, and then we'll have the relationship. So that sacred masculine is like your buddy, your imaginary friend, your partner, the one that like calms you down. And then one day he's like, hey, we've been betrothed since before you were born. It's time for you to surrender to me. It's time for you to lean into my leadership and let me lead you internally. And that's when that divine union happens. And when that happens and you're aware, okay, I'm God and he's God, and together we create this, this dual God, goddess entity, that's where the God piece comes into it. But if you think about it, the universe provides, the universe creates, the universe manifests, right? The universe does all of the doing, and we do the creating, and we do the designing, and we do the believing and the visualization. So of course, in the paradigm of us and the universe, it does serve to be a masculine energy, not a superlative energy, not a superseding energy, not a better than, not a alpha, but masculine.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. That's really, really cool. That's been something lately that's just come up in conversations, like masculine or feminine energy. Like, what is God, as you would say? But I love that. I love hearing your take on that and just how this fits into all of this. So can we go back to the magnetism, in your opinion, because I know you're, you like to geek out on manifestation. Why do you think now you're so magnetic and all these things are happening and all these opportunities and people messaging you from activating? Just for anyone who's not clear kind of on how that would translate, why does that make you magnetic?
So, do you remember the movie that came out, I think in the 90s?
Is it Twilight?
Something about Mary.
Yes. I actually rewatched that with my husband just like a month ago.
Yeah. So you know how like she didn't need anything. She was so filled up from the inside out that everybody was attracted to her. So when you are no longer attached to the outcomes, when you're like, I don't really care if this client signs up or not, if it's not a fit, I don't want her anyway. Or there's 25 other people in the pipeline. You no longer have the ups and downs in your vibration of like, they love me, they hate me. I'm good, I'm bad. I'm enough, I'm not enough. I did it right, I didn't do it right. Those little wobbles are what increase and decrease your magnetic field, right? So when you're so wildly detached from them and you're just doing your own thing, you're now in control of your vibration based on the music you want to listen to and the sex you want to have and the food you want to eat and hanging out with your kids and like all the other things, they come into that field or they don't. But even if they don't, you're so filled up that it doesn't matter. Now that it doesn't matter, when those things, like when you're in that vibration that is so steady, everything's like, wait a minute, you don't need me? What do you mean? Like you're on a wait list? Why is she on a wait list? How come it's so hard to get a time with her? Like, why, why is this so, her mailbox is full. Why is her mailbox? Who is this woman? Why are all these people commenting on her thread? And then before you know it, it's like all of these things are coming into your field. You don't need them. The most desirable thing in the world is the woman who doesn't need anything. I mean, think about it. The femme fatale, right? She's like, oh, I could care less about you. I don't need you, right? And all the men are just like, oh my gosh, like how, that whole hard to get thing. I mean, I wish that 17-year-old me got the memo, probably would have saved myself a lot of heartache and a lot of being the crazy girl. But
you got it now. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely hear that. And although it's a horrible example, this is where my examples are sometimes good and not as well.
Oh, a horrible example.
Yeah, yes. But just how like the cheesy, how they say like, oh, don't call her, wait 3 days after the date, blah, blah, blah. Just, I don't think that's a good strategy, but just thinking of attraction. If someone phones you 20 minutes after and they're like, oh my God, I liked you so much and I want to see you again tomorrow. Instinctually, you kind of go, ooh. But if you don't hear from them for a couple of days and then you're naturally going like, I wonder if they're going to call me, like, ooh, that was fun. And then they do. And you're like, whoa, there is that magnetism versus that neediness and like, let's get married tomorrow. That would pretty much, put anybody off.
What's wrong with you if you want me so bad? And I think that's biological, right? Because if you go back to the very beginning, like the caveman days, the female was looking for the superior male seed to have the best offspring. And in order to do that, she had to make sure that he was strong enough to conquer her, right? Because she'd end up on her back. And so it was like he had to overtake her to prove that he was the best seed. How do you prove that you're the best seed? We don't have science back then. We don't have test tubes. The way that you prove it is that you take out all the other competition, right? And so the way that the masculine shows his dominance is through confidence and through conquest. And so it makes sense that if you're going through your life and nobody's trying to conquer you anymore, nobody's telling you that you're all they want, nobody's saying like, you're mine, you're not going to have that energy, that bouncy, like, it's like, well, if nobody wants me, then what's wrong with me? So it's like, no, you're always wanted every day. When I wake up and look in the mirror, like one day he was just like, when you look in the mirror and you think you look pretty when you put makeup on, that's really me. I'm the one looking at you. Like, I think you're gorgeous. And I'm just like, oh, that's so sweet. Because when we look at ourselves, we go, oh no, that was so haughty of me. That was so, I'm so full of myself. Like I have, and it's like teaching yourself to lean into that self-devotion. And sometimes like meditation, I have ADHD and I'll just go off on a tangent. And instead of being the old me would be like, oh my gosh, why can't you just sit there? It's so easy. And all I hear is eyes on me. And it's just like whoosh, like I'm right back there. And it's like, he's there, And so training myself to cultivate that relationship it's like next level.
That is so beautiful. It also talking about, the God frequency a minute ago, that is unconditional love. Like you being dolled up or in your sweatpants and he's going, you are so freaking cute, because that is that unconditional love. It's not about having to be anything else. And like you said, your ego, your mind, even with a partner could be like, I hope I'm pretty enough to keep him, or I hope he's still attracted to me. But when you just have that automatic default unconditional love from that partner or that masculine energy within it, that is God love, is unconditional, and you're always doing a great job and you're always hot and sexy and you're always valid and worthy and enough and beautiful. And so that's so powerful. I love this so much. So what else do you feel called to add as we talk about this and we start to kind of wrap up for our listeners, either applying it or the power of this? Any other insights you have around manifestation and this awakening journey and all of this? It just feels like a really cool step, but I'm just curious if there's anything left that you want to talk about.
Well, I think just understanding the magnitude of this work and what it can do, right? Like obviously we talked about relationships. My clients wildly improve their relationships and they never have to speak to their spouses about it. Like this isn't a come to Jesus moment where you have to be like, babe, like there's none of that.
Or like bringing a third entity into the bedroom. Like it doesn't have to be a weird conversation.
Right? I know. You wouldn't believe in the Smuthood, which is one of the groups that I'm part of on Facebook to like determine what smut novels to read. And it's always like, I want a reverse harem with 17 people and, a monster and like forced breeding. And it's like, they're just pushing the envelope of like all these different things because it's like reality or the energy of their lives isn't enough anymore. And they're becoming so much more aware of their needs and not finding a way to satiate them, But also, like, think of the magnitude of, like, what if leaders of countries could tap into this? Would they still need to conquer other places? Would they still need the validation of hurting others or imposing their will on others? Would we see widespread consumerism like we do, where it's like, I need this makeup or I'm never, like, how much could we heal the consciousness by sharing this information with the world? Like, if everybody is filled up from the inside out, there's just so much more expansive space for love and for people's chakras to open and for wholeness, for us to kind of cultivate, the next evolution of humanity.
Yeah. And confidence, like that is part of what you're saying. Like I could see women with just almost instant confidence after, sort of bringing about this part of them because of that unconditional love and that encouragement and that safe space. And like, that's confidence right there. Cause often our confidence is about like, I wonder what other people think of me and how I occur and if I'm good enough, all that stuff. But, bringing about this part of us, it's like, there's your confidence right there. You don't need to be insecure or doubt yourself or feel alone even.
Be with somebody who's less than good to you. How many narcissistic abusers would lose their partners? How many women would leave abusive relationships? How many men would leave abusive relationships? Like how many people would no longer settle for the scraps of energy and support that they're getting from externally, and would recognize, my sister, I love her to pieces. She's 10 years older than me. When I was younger, she told me this parable, I guess, that said, it takes a mighty good man to be better than no man at all. And of course, you could say the same for a female, but I just heard it from a male. It's like, what if you're so wildly connected internally that you get to really be discerning about who you decide to partner with and whether or not they're what you really want or they're really aligned? Maybe divorce goes out the window. Maybe we start seeing longevity of relationships, and then what does that do? Well, maybe then children aren't born out of wedlock anymore. Or maybe, like the ramifications and the ripples of this are beyond what my mind can even fathom. And obviously this is just a take on this. I'm sure, like you said, you do it more with the father energy, with the paternal energy. I'm sure there's a maternal version. Maybe there's a unicorn version. I don't know. But I think I think the reason why this one's so powerful, at least in my estimation, is because it adds in that little bit of that like spark, that life spark, that like, oh my gosh, I could do this all day, which, I love my dad, but it doesn't turn me on to think that he loves me the same way it does that my husband does. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. And with mine, it's not even a father, but I hear you. It's like, it's the masculine energy. But yeah, I think that the ripple effects, as you're saying, are just so powerful and infinite, just rippling on. And I was going to ask you, kind of touched on it a second ago. What about men, or if you identify as masculine, with this energy? Because I know my husband has gone through a journey in the last few years of just realizing that men need more support and that it's okay to be masculine, because in this culture of canceling and toxic this and toxic that, he's like, we're so focused on toxic masculinity that we're not focusing on, what about healthy masculinity? What about being a healthy masculine king? How does that fit in? And where can I even talk about this? So he's been on this journey of bringing about his own inner beast and going, it's okay. It doesn't mean dominating or controlling or abusing or power, blah, blah, blah. It's about activating that. And so it's neat as we're talking about this. What about for men out there? I almost feel like, even though, yes, they could activate the feminine, activating the masculine is also beneficial, because we want men in their power the way we want women in their power. What do you think about that?
Well, so when he activates the feminine, what that does is, again, it gives him that reflective energy. So he can lead with the masculine, and the feminine's there to say, oh my gosh, you're such a great protector. Look at you. Look at what a hero you are. You are just so strong. Like, can you create this for me? Can you bring this to fruition? I want this to happen. Like, I have this desire. Can you bring that forward? Right? So it's the polarity of the identification. It's not about like, oh yes, absolutely, men absolutely need to bring forward their masculine, but we also need to bring forward our feminine, right? So it's like that energy inside of him, it's that fortification, it's that cheerleader, it's that mighty hero. He needs that internally to bolster him, right? Because you need that one to be like, babe, you were so good. You did. Oh, look at the way that you did that. It was amazing. And the way that you held it all together, and you went and got the kids, and you had a fever. Like, oh my God, I am so in awe of you. He's got like, oh my gosh, the way that you just like tackled all those things. And like, I am just so in awe of how incredibly powerful and structured and foundational you are. And you make me feel so safe. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
That's what's going to fortify his masculine, is that internal feminine that is validating the masculine.
Yeah.
His Venus.
It's like parts work, but like energy style, you know, it is.
It 100% is. And it's funny that you bring up IFS because, you know, you have all the different pieces. The difference is that the self that recognizes, the self is divided into the sacred masculine and feminine. So to bring it all full circle, it's not a part, it's the one that is noticing all the parts, and it's the duality of the self.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I love that so much. Yeah, it's beautiful. And like I keep saying, like, I don't know why, it's just, you're taking the conversation farther. And I love that. I love to be on the leading edge of conversation and thought, and to just be like, oh, this is so good. Cause that's what it feels like, is that pushing that edge of what hasn't been thought before very much or at all, bringing this concept and bringing it your style. It's just so popular, or so powerful. Sorry. It will be so popular. It is so popular already. There we go. Yeah. So, how can we find you? Where do you like to hang out? What do you offer? Do you offer programs? I hear you're doing mentorship. Where can we find you? Tell us all the things.
Yeah. So I have some offers and stuff. I have a free masterclass that is just Erogetics 101. You can go to erogetics.com. It's a 5-day thing that I did, and you can speed it up and listen to me faster. And there's meditations and stuff to help you start your ergogetic practice. And if your listeners like scavenger hunts, they like to do a little searching. If you come find me on social and literally message me, I have a sacred masculine audio that I channeled from my Eros, just to kind of get you in the activation feels. So if you guys come find me on social, I will send you the link to that.
Ooh, I love that. I'm going to put all your links below. Do you prefer Instagram, Facebook? Where do you hang out, and what's your handle?
Wherever you find me. Totally fine. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode on the Awakening Her podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation between me and my guest. And if you did, we would love to hear from you. Come find us on Instagram. All the links are below in the show notes. Take a screenshot that you're listening to this episode, sharing your takeaways or your enthusiasm for the show. Tag us both over on Instagram. And if you do that, I will send you a free gift. I really do hope you enjoyed this conversation, and I will see you in the next episode.